Welcome back, guys. Today we are checking out another SCP video. Today it's going to be 3 Portlands. Okay. I don't know if this is an object that's an SCP or if it's literally 3 versions of Portland. I don't know. I really have no idea what to make of this title. So let's just go ahead and find out what 3 Portlands is.
3 Portlands. Much of the events that occur in the SCP universe follow a similar pattern. An anomaly makes an appearance, the SCP Foundation becomes aware of the anomaly, and more often than not, they contain said anomaly.
Okay.
While there are a large number of paranatural humans or humanoids contained by the Foundation, it makes you wonder how many are not contained. Surely not every anomalous sapient creature makes itself aware to the Foundation, and sometimes perhaps they manage to evade Foundation capture. The place I'll be discussing today is one where anomalous entities can live in relative peace and harmony, separated from the rest of humanity, but not hunted down by the Foundation.
Okay, interesting. So it's a safe haven for SCPs. Okay.
3 Portlands is a little different than a lot of other SCP concepts, and perhaps it's more than a little reminiscent of things like the wizarding world of Harry Potter, but that's just part of what makes the SCP universe so interesting. 3 Portlands is currently entirely made up of various tales, with no actual SCP articles, but this video will just be looking at the area itself. In short, 3 Portlands is an extra-dimensional space that exists outside of our normal universe, roughly 70 square kilometers in size. It is accessible through multiple portals, or ways, found in Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, and the Isle of Portland in the UK.
Ah. So that's where the 3 Portlands name comes from. Got it. Interesting. So there's 3 portals into this place. And those 3 portals are located in the 3 Portlands. Got it. Interesting. But it is a physical place you can travel to and I guess live there. So, okay.
Thus, 3 Portlands. It's believed to have been first created sometime after the incorporation of Portland, Oregon in 1851, probably in the 1880s. Exactly who or what formed the extra-dimensional space, and for what purpose, is unknown. But it was already populated by the end of the 19th century, and in 1905, the British Occult Service negotiated the usage of 3 Portlands to house Shi refugees from the collapsing kingdom of Avalon. The specifics of these Shi entities are unclear as far as the SCP universe is concerned, but the Shi are creatures from Irish and Scottish mythology, commonly referred to as fairies or elves.
Okay.
The Shi that ended up staying in 3 Portlands would greatly influence its future development, as the British Occult Service got caught up with earthly matters, leaving the residents of 3 Portlands to govern themselves. The principal entity of 3 Portlands is known as a genius Loci, basically a protective spirit inherently tied to its existence. This spirit is sentient, as the BOS had negotiated with it to allow for the refugees, and they continued under the belief that the genius Loci controlled the city, despite the formation of a city council by the residents. In 1922, however, the city council made an amendment to their city charter proclaiming that the genius Loci is officially the mayor of 3 Portlands. In practice, the mayor rarely participates in decisions made by the council, and the council does not often even communicate with the mayor, leading many citizens to believe that the mayor doesn't even exist.
So if I'm to understand this correctly, the city itself, just the actual city itself, not the people in the city, not the people who live there, but the city itself has a sentient consciousness, if you will, that is capable of I assume doing things, maybe even altering parts of the city, or at the very least, being able to manifest some kind of physical avatar that can be used to communicate with the residents or even defend itself, possibly. Interesting. This kind of reminds me of something I've seen before, but let's go ahead and keep digging before I go off onto something.
Without any sort of policing agents within the city, however, paranormal criminals began using Three Portlands as a safe haven to evade earthly authorities, particularly US custom agents, who were unaware of the existence of the city. Eventually, the BOS returned their attention to Three Portlands, realizing the importance of concealing its existence from other paranatural organizations. Despite their efforts, however, the US government became aware of Three Portlands in 1929, after Prohibition agents tracked a bootlegging group known as the Chicago Spirit to the city. The situation was concealed and handed over to the Bureau of Investigation, directed at the time by J. Edgar Hoover. Hoover pretty much went to war with the people of Three Portlands, launching numerous raids into the city, eventually culminating in a firefight between US agents and the city council.
Okay, so that also implies that there's no real gate mechanic that keeps people in or out or prevents them from crossing the barrier into the Three Portlands city, because they earlier in the video they said it similar to the Wizarding World of Hogwarts. Now, I have not seen all of the movies or read the books or anything like that. I'm not a Harry Potter person, but I do know that they get to the school. Don't they go through like a secret entrance that only like magic people can go through, right? So that like normal everyday people, they physically can't get there. And if there are normal people there, then they've been brought there by someone who is magic, at least to my understanding. I don't know. Maybe there's a door you can just walk through. I don't know. But that's what I assume. So it seems like the Three Portlands doors, the portals in the three various Portlands, apparently don't have any kind of mechanism to keep non-anomalous people out of the city. So it seems like, you can just get a bunch of dudes and just roll up in there like the US government did apparently and just assault the place, I guess. But then that brings up the question of, if the city itself is sentient, can it manifest a way to defend itself?
Afterwards, Hoover blocked off all portals leading in or out of the city, arresting anyone who attempted to use them. This siege lasted for 2 months, until the US president negotiated with the council to allow them their autonomy. But in return, US federal agents would be allowed to operate within Three Portlands to a limited degree. The city council agreed out of fear of a full-scale war, despite protests from many of the city's residents. The British didn't really care for this arrangement, as they weren't too keen on Three Portlands remaining autonomous, and they also didn't want US agents poking around. With the Seventh Occult War breaking out in 1939, the British Occult Service abandoned their claim to Three Portlands to the FBI's Unusual Incidents Unit, in exchange for some wartime concessions.
Alright. The British Occult Society, or whatever it was called, that's the first time I'm hearing of them. And this is at least the third time I'm hearing of the Unusual Incidents Unit, so that might be something we check out in the future.
The Seventh Occult War coincided with World War II, as Axis occultists fought against the precursors to the Global Occult Initiative. Three Portlands would be used to transport supplies and personnel between North America and Britain, and so eventually the city came under attack from Nazi occult forces. Thanks to combined efforts of the UIU, the BOS, and citizens of the city, the attack was repelled. After the war, as more paranatural organizations came into existence, and more efforts were made by various governments to conceal the paranormal from the public, more and more anomalous entities were forced out of urban areas. Many of the entities found refuge in 3 Portlands, and in 1956, Prometheus Laboratories began using the city for their parascientific research. Things went pretty smoothly for 3 Portlands after that, with the UIU and the GOC both letting the city retain most of their autonomy, and both working to conceal the city's existence, primarily from the group they considered the greatest threat to 3 Portland's autonomy, the SCP Foundation.
Okay.
Although the UIU is often looked at as an incompetent organization, it's quite impressive that they managed to conceal 3 Portlands from the Foundation until 1970. Because of this, the UIU were seen quite favorably by many 3 Portlands residents, and a number of them would join the UIU as irregular agents. Despite the fears associated with the Foundation, though, 3 Portlands continued to exist much as it had been. The paratech industry continued to grow in the city for some time, until the GOC decided they wanted a bit more oversight into what was going on in that field, so they formed their own free port called UrTech, where paranormal companies could develop technology sponsored by the GOC.
Now, 3 Portlands is, from what I understand, most of the inhabitants are anomalous? Is this correct? Is this city, what I'm asking is this city primarily inhabited by people or objects with anomalous properties, or is it like half normal people that are just working there and living there and helping the anomalous people out? Because I'm just, I mean, there's probably not a direct answer for this the way these SCPs are written. I'm just curious as to like the population density of anomalous beings in the city. Like, is it more than half of the people that are anomalous that live there? Or is it like 75%? Or is it like 95%? Like, how anomalous is this city? I mean, obviously it's very anomalous, but like the population, that's what I'm curious about. Like, how many of its citizens are actually anomalies? And if it's a really high percentage, why would anyone even attempt to attack it, knowing what some of these anomalies are capable of?
In the wake of the Cold War, with the GOC bailing out a number of paratech companies in UrTech from bankruptcy, the waning paratech industry in 3 Portlands effectively collapsed. At the same time, a group known as the Lighthouse Mafia grew to prominence for their illegal smuggling of.
And I wonder if the paratech industry, I wonder if when that collapsed, if that had anything to do with the fall of Prometheus Labs. Because Prometheus Labs shut down, and that's basically what they do, is they make this anomalous technology, or they build regular technology based off of anomalous technology. So if this paratech, if the whole industry that was basically based in 3 Portlands collapsed, I wonder if that coincided with the collapse of Prometheus Labs, who, they've already stated, has a very vested interest in the 3 Portlands city and doing research there. So I wonder if one had an effect on the other, if that was one of the causes for the fall of Prometheus Labs.
Paratech through 3 Portlands. Things began to recover for 3 Portlands around 2000, when a native citizen named Vincent Anderson started a company known as Anderson Robotics. Anderson Robotics became one of the most successful paratech companies, and Anderson made a number of generous contributions to the city. Since Anderson was well loved by the people of 3 Portlands, he knew he could circumvent and eventually disregard a number of restrictions on paratech development, without the UIU acting against him. Due to the laws in place that only the UIU have overarching criminal jurisdiction in 3 Portlands, the Foundation couldn't do much against Anderson either. This changed in 2018, however, when it was discovered that Anderson had used androids to infiltrate the US government. An arrest warrant was issued, and Anderson disappeared, although his company still continued to run. In 2024, Anderson was finally captured by a joint task force between the Foundation and the UIU during a raid on the Anderson Robotics headquarters in downtown 3 Portlands.
Okay, so the Anderson Robotics headquarters was located in 3 Portlands. Okay, well, it looks like I'm going to have to be looking into Anderson Robotics soon.
The overt action led to a sharp decline in the UIU's popularity amongst the residents. That about covers it for the broad topic of 3 Portland's history, so let's move on to talking more about the city itself. Due to the formation of the pocket universe where 3 Portlands is located, it's possible to see any point of the city from any other point, making it extremely disorienting for newcomers. There are no natural astronomical or meteorological events in the city.
Wait, you can see any part of the city from any other part of the city. Wouldn't that mean, because they've already said that it has a definitive, basically square kilometer measurement of the city. So is the whole thing built within like a concave imprint, like a meteor crater, right? Is the whole thing built in something like that, like a bowl shape, so that you could literally see any part of the city from any other part of the city? Because that's the only way that would be possible. If it was flat, if it was on flat ground, then, you know, buildings itself would obstruct the view. So it's got to be built in some form of a bowl, essentially.
But the mayor, the genius Loci that controls 3 Portlands, somehow provides a day-night cycle and various weather events. The sun position is roughly linked to Portland, Maine, and the weather, generally rain, emulates the current weather of the 3 Portland regions on Earth. Most curiously, the ground surface of the city constantly expands away from the city center at a typically imperceptible rate. Additionally, approximately 3 miles from the city center in all directions is an impassable, invisible barrier placed by the mayor. The ground continues past it for a while, until it eventually degrades into the nothingness of unspace.
Okay, so it is circular in its shape, given that there's a 3-mile radius around the center of this, a 3-mile radius from the center of the city. The city has essentially thrown up an invisible wall, an invisible barrier, like a video game. So we know that the city is circular in shape, and you can see every point of the city from any other point of the city, which does lead me to believe that it's in something like a city that's been built inside of a giant meteor crater, where the whole thing is shaped like a bowl, and they built a city inside of it.
The barrier therefore marks the outer edge of the city, but buildings are continually, albeit slowly, pushed out of this barrier. This limits the maximum size of the city, as well as forcing inhabitants to continue to construct new buildings. There are some structures that are anchored in place, however, and do not move along with the other buildings, creating other problems in regards to street grids and the ground surface. Most of these anchored buildings were created by the mayor, although some have been created by certain residents. The city center is a large anchor point from which the expansion stretches outwards, and so it's the location of various government buildings. The immediate space around it is devoted to a public park, due to being the most affected by the expansion. Other anchor regions include Prometheus Plaza, Memorial Park, and the campus for the International Center for the Study of Unified Thaumatology. Although the UIU are responsible for any
The thaumatology? I'm not saying that right, but that's the study of magic, if I'm correct, right? In the SCP universe, that's the use of magic?
criminal investigations within the city, Three Portlands does have their own local police department, consisting of a small number of officers, supplemented by volunteers, and security golems. Their primary focus is on crime prevention, community outreach, event security, and assisting the UIU when necessary. The city itself is arranged along a polar grid, with a number of concentric rings of streets at irregular intervals spread out from the city center. Since these roads are not designed for motor vehicles, the City Council maintains a ban on personal automobiles and heavy vehicles, with only a few exemptions. Several cab companies instead operate auto rickshaws, which are capable of navigating through Three Portland's narrow streets. There is also a mass transit system based on trolleys that run along all the major streets, which are free to use for anyone except for members of the UIU, who have to pay $20 a month. This money apparently goes to the J. Edgar Hoover Defamation Fund. Speaking of currency,
everybody gets the ride for free, except you guys. You guys still gotta pay.
there is no local currency for Three Portlands, so instead most business is conducted using the US dollar and the British pound sterling. The barter system is also alive and well in the city, but often involves something called a GIAS contract.
Okay.
There are some specific details associated with it, but basically it's a limited form of mind control that forces an individual to follow through on a contract. This ensures that a deal properly goes through, but due to its potential for abuse, there have been calls for the outlawing of GIAS contracts. Water and electricity are all provided to the city by the mayor, but communication networks are not, making them a bit rougher around the edges. There is a citywide intranet that is not connected to the global internet, allowing for open communication between residents. This intranet has its own forms of social media, the most popular being Void, a local clone of Twitter. Prometheus Labs was responsible for providing connections to the global internet, and after the company's breakup, the city purchased a 50% stake in the subsidiary responsible for the internet connections, turning it into a municipal ISP. Outgoing internet traffic is required to pass through UIU filters to make sure the global public doesn't learn anything they shouldn't, which slows things down. I mentioned security golems before, as artificially created golems comprise almost the entire labor force in Three Portlands. The local golem maker.
Okay, so if that's the case, that changes the whole infrastructure of jobs and stuff like that. That means that most people who live in Three Portlands don't have jobs the same way we do in the regular world. If all their labor is done by golems, essentially, and they don't have their own money either, their own currency, so they use external currency. Man, that leaves a lot of free time for the residents of Three Portlands to get up to shenanigans, I guess. I mean, what do you do when you don't have to have a job and you don't need money? Like,
Union, Golemancy United, maintains significant political and economic power in the city because of this. Golems are involved in manufacturing, construction, sanitation, and transit, allowing many residents to pursue creative and scientific endeavors in lieu of working. This, of course, has led to widespread unemployment across the city, as Golemancy United has fought to put off any ordinances about restricting the number of golems a company can employ. This is why the paratech industry is so prominent in 3 Portlands, as golems can't handle the sensitive manufacturing of paranatural technology. There is a large number of venture capital funded startups throughout the city, most failing within the first few months. As for education, there's no public school system within 3 Portlands, as citizens have feared that either the local government or perhaps other governments could use it for indoctrination. Most non-humans within the city utilize community schools, as the human population has the option of enrolling in one of the earthly Portland schools, a practice discouraged by the UIU. Homeschooling is of course also popular, and there are a handful of private for-profit schools. 3 Portland's Community College is the largest university in the city, open to all Portland's residents, and offering 2- and 4-year degree programs in both mundane and paranormal fields.
Okay, so that gives a little bit more information here. I suppose if you're not spending your time being forced to work a job to provide yourself the most basic of necessities like food and shelter, it seems like most of the necessities required are basically given to all citizens. You know, it doesn't seem like there's much, if any, homelessness. While there is a huge unemployment rate, that doesn't necessarily equate to homelessness or things like that. They said that they have basically community schools up until the college level, and then you have a massive university. That could cause some disparity in education, not having uniform education for all of its citizens. And it almost seems like a lot of education is voluntary. Like, it doesn't say that you have to go to school or that there's a certain requirement for the amount of education you have to have. It seems like that there's a lot of double-edged stuff going on in 3 Portlands. On one hand, it might seem like it has the potential to be some kind of utopian society, but on the other hand, this is a place where it was essentially founded by criminals and people seeking to avoid the authorities. And with no standardized education or no need for jobs, that just seems ripe for crime, especially when a lot of these people or objects have anomalous properties. It's the whole idea of 3 Portlands would make an absolutely phenomenal TV show. Frankly, I would be way more interested in seeing a show based around the concept of 3 Portlands than an actual show about the Foundation or SCPs. I think 3 Portlands would be a phenomenal idea for a show, just getting into, because you still have all the anomalous stuff that's involved with the SCP universe, yet it still has its very own unique feel and vibe with it being its own separate place from all of, reality, essentially. It's kind of like having your own Hogwarts, essentially, that special magical world that only you and your magical friends can go to and talk about. It's kind of like that, except for science and anomalies. Like, it has so much. This 3 Portlands idea has a ton of potential, and I love it.
It's not considered an occult college, though, due to only teaching introductory level thaumatology. The largest occult college is the 3 Portlands branch of the International Center for the Study of Unified Thaumatology, which offers extended degree programs focusing on advanced occult studies.
Okay, so not only does 3 Portlands have a very high degree of anomalous people living in it, and that would also go to assume that there's a very high number of anomalous objects in the city, as well as it being the almost, from what I can tell, the epicenter of technology for places like Prometheus Labs, Anderson Robotics. Then you've got the influence of the UIU, the British version of the UIU, the foundation, and the U.S. government. There's a ton going on here, and on top of all of that, it's also a place where legitimate magic exists as well. So you have anomalous people, anomalous objects, very high tech advanced technology, and magic existing in the same place. Like, this is crazy.
ICSUT Portland's has the highest levels of enrollment of any ICSUT campus, attracting students from across the globe. It also receives a large share of the GOC's research contracts, partners with local companies on major research projects, and employs a large number of the city's residents. As for the residents themselves, about 80,000 people permanently reside in the city as calculated by the UIU.
Okay. 80,000 people, and that's of course just an estimate, let's say 100,000 people. Okay, that's still actually, because this gets back to my point where I was wondering how many people actually live here, because they gave us an actual physical description of the size of the city, so that would limit how many people can physically live there at any given time. So 80 to 100,000 people, okay, give or take. Let's say, due to the nature of the city itself, let's say 70% of the people are anomalous. That's 70,000 anomalous individuals walking around in a city. And yet it still draws the number down enough to where you're not dealing with something like in New York, where they have millions of people in an area like this.
A number of people pass through the city every day. As many as 2,000 live in one of the adjacent Portlands on Earth and commute to 3 Portlands for work each day.
Oh, okay.
And many more travel to the city occasionally for supplies and services. Samples of the population asked about their nationality show that the majority are American or native to 3 Portlands.
Okay.
A small percentage being British or She, and some of them coming from elsewhere, or instead declaring that nations aren't real. As for species, about 80% of the population is either human or parahuman, including cyborgs, psychics, minor reality benders, biologically modified, or shapeshifters. 13% are She.
80%, they said, are some type of human or some type of modified human. Interesting.
3% are ghosts, and the rest are either
ghosts,
intelligent animals, amorphous shapeshifters, spirits, major reality benders, or conceptual entities. Individual expression and liberty is highly valued among the residents, most of them distrustful of authority. Almost half of them identify as having no religious affiliation, although only 5% identify as atheists.
Yeah. Religion starts to lose a lot of meaning when you're dealing with a lot of the stuff involved in this whole SCP universe. It's very understandable for people to say, what is the point of believing in a deity when I know Jim Bob that lives 3 houses down can warp reality into anything he can conceive of?
And 3% identify as anti-theists, individuals that believe in one or more gods and possess a desire to destroy them. The largest conventional religion is She ancestor veneration, with about 12% of the population, and Maxwellism, a branch of the Church of the Broken God, with 11%. I think after hearing about 3 Portlands, you probably either like it or hate it. You can either see the fun potential of such a place existing in the SCP universe, and its similarities to the Wizarding World or Sigil from Planescape, or you might think such a city has no place in the SCP universe.
Well, that's technically why it doesn't exist in the SCP universe. It exists in its own pocket dimension. But man, no, I fall on the side of loving it. I mean, there's so much potential here for almost any kind of storyline. You know, as far as putting this into a television show or a movie or some kind of animated format, there's so much potential for any kind of storyline. You could do horror, you could do science fiction, you can do like a mystery, you could do like a noir detective thing and still make it work in Three Portlands. You know, you could do supernatural stuff, ghost hunters, aliens. You could do anything in a city like this. So I absolutely see the potential for something like this. Given the chance, I would rather spend my time in Three Portlands than as a researcher at the Foundation. This place is amazing.
The beauty of SCP, of course, is that you can very easily take or leave any part of it. Personally, I enjoy little pockets of imagination such as Three Portlands, a place where nothing really overtly horrific or unimaginable might happen, but is ripe for anomalous tales.
The city of Three Portlands is the largest paranormal enclave in the United States, or within our jurisdiction at least. I'm still not super clear on the schematics or on the semantics of this multiverse stuff. But what that means is that you're going to see things you've never seen before. Things you never thought possible before. Anarists and wizards are just the tip of the iceberg. We've got cyborgs, talking dogs, demigods, ghosts, sidekicks, shapeshifters, fairies, and gods. And gods know what else is in this town. Most of them are human or human-ish. Some of them aren't. So try to keep an open mind. We're the outsiders here. When in doubt, act like a Boy Scout. Helpful, courteous, and prepared for the end of the world. Special Agent Kenneth Spencer. Orientation for incoming agents of the UIU's Three Portlands Field Office. Okay, guys, that was the Three Portlands, and I must say that I really, really like this one. So, holy cow, and thank you guys for suggesting this one because this one is frankly amazing. It just, my mind right now is just running wild with all of the possibilities that this particular SCP is capable of. So I absolutely loved it, and I hope you guys also loved the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. As always, leave a comment down below. Drop some more hot recommendations like Three Portlands, because this was awesome. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the video. Take care of yourselves, and have a great day.